The following episode can be viewed on the YouTube channel Bernie or Bust Television. Good morning, USA, and welcome to another episode of the Bernie or Bust Show. Today's show has three parts. First part is to make Bernie's case that Joe Biden absolutely will have his ass handed to him on a plate by Donald Trump in a general election, particularly if the economy remains as it is. Second point is that Republicans and centrist oligarchic corporate-sponsored Democrats will be working their asses off trying to show us why Medicare for all is not a good idea. They're working hand in glove with the pharmaceuticals companies and the health insurance companies. The third point is to wrap up yesterday's topic about the Bernie sisters who are pissed at Elizabeth Warren, and let's figure out some way to move forward from this. That's the third topic. So let's get going. Fact check: Bernie versus Biden. This is David Sirota, Bernie's speechwriter.
During a recent CNN appearance, Bernie Sanders made four powerful assertions that may have shocked many people. So we're deciding to fact-check Bernie's claims and see if they stand up to scrutiny.
So let's see.
Joe Biden voted and helped lead the effort for the war in Iraq, the most dangerous foreign policy blunder in the modern history of this country.
We rate this claim 100% true. As Senate Foreign Relations Committee Chairman, Joe Biden not only helped Republicans pass the Iraq War resolution, he led the fight to help Republicans vote down Democratic amendments to limit that resolution. After the war began, Biden also gave a speech bragging about how proud he was to support the Iraq War resolution. He said, quote, "I would vote that way again."
He would.
Biden has recently tried to pretend he didn't support the Iraq War, but CNN fact-checkers have proven that to be false.
Oh, CNN.
Joe Biden voted for the disastrous trade agreements like NAFTA and permanent normal trade relations with China, which
The Hill Rising had Trump campaign strategist on their show yesterday, and he's definitely going to go after Biden for NAFTA and TPP. He said so. So I don't know if I'm showing you that part of the clip. I'm showing you a different part of that clip, but definitely Trump can go after Biden on these pernicious trade agreements.
cost us millions of jobs. You think that's going to play well in Michigan or Wisconsin or Pennsylvania?
We rate this claim 100% true. Biden voted for NAFTA and the China Free Trade Deal, which did indeed cost Americans millions of jobs, and which may not play all that well in key swing states that Democrats need to win back in 2020.
Joe Biden...
Just those three states decided it against Hillary and for Trump last time. Bernie Sanders supporters in those three states who were disgruntled because they cheated Bernie voted directly for Donald Trump. So if you give it to Biden this time, if Biden is, and he is the choice, the first choice, and then Elizabeth is the second choice of the Clinton machine, Obama world, as we've shown over the months. If you give it to Biden, guaranteed, those Bernie supporters, at least, if not other just disaffected workers in those states, will hand Biden his ass on a plate. They will give it to Donald Trump again, just in those states. And if you are a political junkie and you understand how the Electoral College works, those states have a lot more importance than the average American realizes or understands. Those three states gave it to Trump and took it away from Hillary last time. And they would do the same to Biden this time.
Has been on the floor of the Senate talking about the need to cut Social Security or Medicare or Medicaid.
We rate this claim 100% true. While Bernie has fought to protect and expand Social Security, Joe Biden has repeatedly called for cuts to Social Security. And it's also true that Biden bragged about trying to cut Social Security Medicare and Medicaid on the floor of the U.S. Senate.
When I argued that we should freeze federal spending, I meant Social Security as well. I meant Medicare and Medicaid. I meant veterans benefits. I meant every single solitary thing in the
government. At least he wasn't stuttering or gaffing or fondling, but holy shit, he really said that. And Trump knows he's a little bit vulnerable on this issue. The Trump campaign guy said that President Trump has taken this off the table. He will definitely support Medicare and or Medicaid and Social Security. So we don't even have to talk about that. But he's weak, but not as weak as Joe Biden. You got to say he's not as weak as Joe Biden in this area. This little clip, it's going to get played over and over and over if Joe Biden wins the nomination or is given by the party bosses the nomination after a brokered convention in July. Just saying, that's my prediction. If it's a brokered convention, the party bosses will do their damnedest to give it to Joe Biden, and then he'll get his ass handed to him on a plate because they'll show this clip over and over and over. Plus the one about his son Hunter in Ukraine and quoting him directly saying, yeah, if you don't investigate the way I want you to, you're going to get fired. We're not going to give you all this money. That controversy is real, and they're going to hand those two things to the American voters over and over and over. And that's what works with propaganda. You just got to see it over and over and over, and eventually you think it's true.
Government. And I not only tried it once, I tried it twice, I tried it a third time, and I tried it a fourth time.
Joe Biden pushed a bankruptcy bill, which has caused enormous financial problems for working families.
We rate this claim 100% true. Joe Biden led the fight to help Republicans and the credit card industry pass a bankruptcy bill that made it harder for Americans to reduce their student debts. He even broke with Barack Obama and helped Republicans block a Democratic amendment to protect people being crushed by medical debt.
There you go.
And so let's review. Bernie Sanders claimed that Joe Biden led the fight for the Iraq War, voted for job-killing trade deals, repeatedly called for cuts to Social Security, and backed a bankruptcy bill that crushed Americans with debt. We rate all of these claims true.
Ding, ding, ding. Trump campaign agrees CNN mods out to get Bernie Sanders. Let's set this up with Kyle Kulinski talking about the propagandists who are trying to make you hate Medicare for all, and then we'll back it up with the Trump guy.
The campaign against Medicare for all is spending millions. Progressives, not so much.
Right.
It's a one-sided assault, said a progressive member of Congress. So they go on in this article to explain that there are various groups that are doing an onslaught against Medicare for all. There's a group called the Partnership for America's Healthcare Future, which is an industry front group representing private health insurers, hospitals, and pharmaceutical companies. And they've spent at least $1 million in television advertisements blasting Medicare for all, and that's in Iowa alone.
Oh, wow.
Now, this same group, by the way, is also ghostwriting anti-Medicare for all op-eds for state lawmakers as well.
Did you hear that? That's the process. The bill, remember that show when we were kids? Oh, some of you aren't as old as I am, but I'm only a bill. Remember that? If you do, sing it with me. No, I won't do that. But if you remember, they spent this whole Saturday morning cartoon talking about how bills get signed into law. And then there's this funny, maybe I'll find it and paste it on here on my bald head. How does a bill work? That's an easy one, Billy. Corporations write the bill and then they bribe our elected officials until the bill passes.
So their tentacles are everywhere, man.
Tentacles.
The for-profit health insurance companies' tentacles are everywhere, trying everything they can, pulling out all the stops to prevent Medicare for all and make you think it's, going to lead to a dystopian future where your healthcare situation is way worse than it is now, when, of course, the opposite is true.
Right. And so he goes on and makes that point better, but not better than this guy. This guy was asked by Crystal if how he would deal with Bernie.
Perspective of the race there? Is it just going to be all about healthcare and Medicare for all?
Well, that's a big thing.
Yeah,
I mean, you
right.
know, if Bernie is the opponent, you know, there are different ways to go about him. He's going to have a problem trying to explain to union members. Again, this affects union members. The Medicare for all deal is an absolute outlawing of private employer-provided health care plan.
That guy should have slime all over his head, our little devil horns. He's doing exactly what Kyle was just talking about. He's saying, oh, people who have negotiated for their health care and given up on wages, given in on wages to get better health care, they're going to be pissed if you try to say you can't have the health care that you negotiated. And Sarah Nelson of the Flight Attendants Union came on a show months ago and totally debunked that. It's evil. And union people, and Crystal kind of pushed back on him on this show, and they just called it true. So we'll have to agree to disagree. But this is bullshit. The union people, if they're really union people and they're not the paid company yes people of the higher ups, the administrators, real union people would love to have health insurance off the table so they could negotiate directly for better benefits. It's a scam, really, to have both things on the table at once, because they slide one up and slide the other down. You want a low monthly payment. Oh, but you're going to be paying for 30 years. And if they don't get you one way, they get you the other way. That's how they've always been able to slide at the bargaining table. They play one thing off of the other. And it would be great benefit to union negotiators to have only one thing to talk about, or one main thing. And then also, in a previous show, we talked about if Medicare was off the table, if healthcare was off the table, you could negotiate for better wages and for better working conditions. And this came out when we were talking with social workers in California who were getting hammered. Their union was getting hammered. And so real union people, not the sock puppets that we have for union leaders now, but if the rank and file and the legitimate leaders of unions are telling the truth, and they are, it would be a great benefit to have healthcare off the table in negotiations. So this guy is just blowing smoke up your ass.
Plans. And what that means is people who are in unions, who spend a long time negotiating for these health care benefits, and in many cases perhaps forewent higher wages in exchange for better benefits, those are considered employer-private plans,
right.
Employer-provided plans. Under Bernie's health care plan, those are gone, outlawed. So those union members negotiated for nothing, because those health care plans would vanish in a second. He's got a lot of explaining to do to millions of union members across the industrial parts of the country, why they negotiated for health plans that he's going to just wipe out.
So there we go back to Kyle's point that the millions of dollars is spent in advertising by the industry itself. But Trump also is going to be spending millions of dollars. If it's Bernie, he might even be spending $1 billion on ads directly smacking this point around. And people are gullible. If they hear the same thing enough times, they'll believe it. But this is utter bullshit. So we've got to do our best work getting the word out around. And the corporate media are the blockade. The corporate media are going to be parroting this guy. And the DNC, MSDNC, WAPO, New York Times, CNN, they're all going to be, Clinton News Network, they're all going to be talking about what this guy is talking about, because they're all the same. The Republicans and the moderate Democrats are all the same. They're just evil puppets of evil puppet masters. And this bullshit is, you're just going to hear it nonstop on television. If you're somebody who listens to corporate news, you're just going to hear this over and over and over. Later on in this same show, they talk about the Elizabeth hanky-panky with CNN and Politico. I think this sums it up well. This is from Mrs. Wagner's Pies, replying to Ryan Grimm. Warren stabbing Bernie in the back to help Biden in hopes of getting a VP nod is the most cynical political move I've ever seen. And I lived through President Clinton back in the 90s. So here is the Bernie sister pissed at Elizabeth. And there were a lot of people who were trying to get their a refund for their political contributions to the Warren campaign. And Act Blue, I guess, is getting a lot of those requests because after this story broke, Elizabeth supporters looked at the true Elizabeth for the first time. They finally understood what a lot of us have been talking about for months. She's a liar. She's duplicitous. She's sneaky. She says whatever she needs to say. And she did that with Clinton. Brigadier Sanders said, wasn't that basically the reason why she stayed silent during the 2016 election? Because Hillary dangled VP in front of her with no intention of making her VP? So Elizabeth fell for it. She thought she was going to be VP to Hillary, and that wasn't going to happen. But she basically stabbed Bernie in the back already then, and now she's stabbing him again because she just sucks up to power. She thinks Biden, she bet on the wrong horse last time, and she's clearly betting on the wrong horse this time. Furthermore, she has Clinton staffers, former Clinton staffers on her team. And obviously her idea, and this has been brewing for months, CNN has been waiting for months to drop this story. And when did they drop it? Right before the Iowa caucuses. That's when they dropped it. They've been waiting and they were watching and trying to find the perfect time to drop this story, and then they dropped it. And now we can all see what Elizabeth is made of. She worked with Hillary before. She was paid by Hillary again this time to join the race and to be the second fiddle to Biden, or the safety valve if Biden tanks, if he completely loses whatever marbles he has left. And so here we are. She was working against Bernie the whole time. And the Bernie sisters are particularly miffed because she criticized Bernie on being a sexist. Mimi Roca, Bernie Sanders makes my skin crawl. And we had the same thing yesterday. Watch yesterday's show. I had another MSDNC commentator saying the same thing in a slightly different way, but with the same snarling visage. Bernie, yeah, he has a problem with being a sexist. No, you're just inventing shit. And the true Bernie supporters, bros and sisters, they are all incensed. Bernie cashed in yesterday on his fundraising. So Elizabeth, they're trying to get refunds, and burners are donating like crazy because this is so obviously rigged and awful. And even the Trump guy noticed it.
I thought this is probably one of the first times that we felt we had something in common with Bernie Sanders.
You felt some solidarity
I think
there.
that the folks on the stage, we're used to this, but it seemed like the folks on the stage were sort of out to get Bernie, or at least aligned against him. I mean, that exchange with Elizabeth Warren, and how the moderator just chose to, there were two people in this conversation. She very clearly chose to believe Elizabeth Warren's version of that conversation that they had. And I think if we learned anything from the debate last night, it's that if you go into a private conversation with Elizabeth Warren, you should bring a witness.
And that brings us to the last point. Bernie or bust is what's necessary in this situation. We've been waiting for the rigging. That's what got Bernie or bust going last time, was the obvious blatant rigging, the purging of voter rolls, the election ballot box tampering, all of the blatant rigging that happened last time. And the same people are behind it this time. We've got the Clinton machine obviously meddling in Elizabeth Warren's affairs. And so that's what put people over the edge last time. Bernie or bust, Bernie or bust. It's time again. If you're somebody who's just waiting and watching to see if they rig it again, then you're just going along with the vote blue no matter who crowd. Whether you say you're a true burner or a true progressive, if you're not willing to go full frontal, Bernie or bust, you're allowing them to do the same thing again. So if you're really pissed, if you're saying, look, they're just trying to give it to some corporate candidate, and we all know Bernie is the answer to the climate crisis, he's the answer to social inequalities, and most of all, to economic inequalities, this is the time for Bernie. And if you're just waiting and watching and saying, well, I guess I'll vote for Elizabeth if they cheat Bernie, I guess I'll vote for Joe Biden if they cheat Bernie, you're on the wrong side of history. This is the time for Bernie or bust. just as it had a time last time, and that's when it went viral. There's a time now. You can pledge or not. BernieOrBust.info is a place you could go sign the Bernie or Bust pledge. But whether you pledge or not, just make it clear to everybody you know. Use my little graphic if you want to. I could show it to you now. Here it is. Bernie or Bust. Pay attention this time. I went on Vistaprint and I made this into a banner that's 2.5 feet tall by 4 feet wide. I'm going to put it on my front porch. Bernie or Bust. Pay attention this time. Because that's the answer. That's what we need. If you are a true Berner and a true progressive and you want to do everything possible to give Bernie the nomination this time, after that, let's see what happens. Let's see if Bernie can beat Trump. I'm sure that he can. You can hold me to that. I'd say the biggest job is to get him the nomination. I'd say Trump is a much easier opponent to fight than the Clinton machine and Obama world. I'd say if we can beat, and Wall Street and the oligarchs pulling all the strings up above their heads, if we can beat Obama world and Clinton world and the MSDNC and all the corporate media aligned against us and get Bernie the nomination, I'd say after that, Bernie can take care of himself. We'll see. You can hold me to this. We can go back and watch this episode on January 16th, 2020. But I'm willing to put it out there. I think it'll be easy for Bernie to beat Trump, especially if the economy tanks. But we're not gonna talk about that yet. But I really think that getting him the nomination is the main job that we all have. So spread this around, put it in front of people, buy a bumper sticker at BernieOrBust.info, get a Porch Banner made. I'll give you this graphic if you want to use it yourself. It took a while to get it at a resolution that was high enough to work for a banner. So rather than you having to do all that messing around, I'll give you the Vistaprint information, or use some other company if you want. I'm not getting paid by anybody, obviously. So, and Vistaprint made this backdrop that I use. Vistaprint. So I'm happy with the way they do things, but that's again an unpaid for plug for them. And I'll show you the banner when it comes. I'll show you what it looks like on my porch. In the meantime, you know the drill. Get on board the Bernie or Bust train. Come get on board the Bernie or Bust train. Once you hear that clickety-clack, there ain't no time for turning back. Go get on board the Bernie or Bust train. The preceding episode can be viewed on the YouTube channel Bernie or Bust Television.